In the past, we thought America was imposing a set of demands on India. But today, the US is trying to revise it and is seeking support from India. India has a chance to actively participate and shape the new economic order rather than merely complaining about it.
Hi, so this week, everyone, Raja Mohan is joining us very quickly from outside a conference, so we'll have a very quick video. So this week in your column in Raja Mandala, you focused on U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's speech, which highlights the sort of geo-economic shift and a lot of economic policy, both domestic and foreign, from a national security advisor is interesting for various reasons. So one of the things the shift marks, you call it the new Washington consensus that is being attempted. The old one was free trade, IMF, World Bank. This is evolving in terms of perhaps industrial policy domestically and then other things with like-minded partners abroad. So how much is this because of domestic considerations, the sort of thing that, jobs have been pushed to China, that this WTO-led kind of free market, neoliberal capitalism has failed the American public? And how much is it to do with just China's rise internationally and Belt and Road Initiative and China sort of expanding its influence as it has grown economically?
I think it is both because you have a situation where there is a recognition of the fact that globalization has not benefited all sections of the American society, that it has not really worked for the lower end of the American society. Therefore, I think the need to take a fresh look that while it has helped the financial sector, while it helped the rich, it has not really helped the working people of the United States. Second, a part of the reason for this is the integration of China, a non-market economy, into the global trading order in 2001, which has led to all kinds of unexpected consequences. Given the nature of the Chinese economy, its willingness to weaponize its role as a factory for the world. So together, both these factors, I think the domestic consideration of inequality, as well as the impact of China's rise and China's manipulation of the global trading system on the nature of trade flows with the United States. In many ways, I think we face the same set of issues, whether it is the massive trade deficit with China or China's impact on India's manufacturing. So these are issues that India actually shares with. If you recall that India has moved towards, say, from saying free trade to more selective bilateral free trade agreements. It has moved from uncritical globalization to saying self-reliance, Atmanirbharata, and using industrial policy to promote domestic manufacturing. So there are parallels here between what the US is doing and what India is doing. So I think we are really in a new moment because the interesting thing is for 30 years, we've tried to adapt to the old Washington consensus. Now, I think the challenge for Indian statecraft is that the US is seeking to revise this order. The very country that set it up is trying to revise this order. You can say US is the revisionist power here. And because it's a number one economy still, it's going to have a big impact on how we organize the system. This will involve serious debates within the US, with the Republicans who don't share all these assumptions, with the allies, with the Europeans who have a different worldview when it comes to these issues, and other partners. But I think this is an inflection point in the evolution of the global economic order. And I think this opens up all kinds of possibilities as well as major challenges for India.
So China, in one sense, China's BRI has been this big bugbear. Now recently the US announcing that India has had a pipeline, seaports, development in the Middle East.
Yeah.
How is that? What kind of timelines, or what is it that India is now? India is in these discussions in a way that it wasn't in the past, say 10, 20, even 30 years ago. What are the kinds of things we need to deliver on? Because we've been a little notorious sometimes in our neighborhood for not being the best at, say, completing projects. The kind of financial arrangements you're looking at now that BRI is seen as predatory.
So here I would say the project that Jake Sullivan, when he came to Saudi Arabia, met the Indian National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, he was talking about a specific project in the Gulf. But I think in the speech on US economic policy, what Jake Sullivan has done is really to outline a new framework. that the US recognizes the dangers posed by the Belt and Road Initiative is an assessment that India shares on the indebtedness of large number of countries, the unsustainable economic and environmental conditions that are attached to the Chinese BRI. What Sullivan is saying now is they're going to deliver large amounts of capital to promote infrastructure development in the developing world. That's a new promise. And so they have a whole infrastructure initiative. Here again, India is doing things on its own in the region. Now, the question is how much that India and the US, because they share the analysis of the dangers created by BRI. They also agree on the prescription that we need alternatives. Now, the question is, can India and the US come together along with Japan and other like-minded partners like Europe to say, is one thing to criticize BRI, but you have to offer an alternative. And I think what we're seeing here is an effort to develop an alternative framework which would be of use to the other developing countries.
The final question, everyone read the piece. It has a lot in it. It's on the IndianExpress.com. So, with India's thus far, we've seen that a sort of reluctance, whether, I mean, we said it's changed, of course, now over time, but this engaging, going whole hog, let's say, or trying, if this is an inflection point, being ahead of the curve rather than a wait and watch. There's some trepidation in Indian foreign policy circles about this kind of engagement with the US even now. Do you think that is still a problem in this day and age, or are we more or less over that kind of thing?
No, I think it's always a challenge, but I think we've come a long way from the 90s because when we were really defensive, there was no domestic agreement. If you remember our parliament, one party, when it's in power, seeks to ensure a reform. When it's in the opposition, it opposes that same reform. So we went through a very difficult period. But today, I think India as a large economy has become the fifth largest economy in the world. So objectively speaking, there is a lot more self-confidence. But yet we don't see it always in the discourse. And there were divisions when Prime Minister moved towards walking out of the RCEP, the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, focused on domestic manufacturing. A lot of people criticized that policy.
Yeah.
Those differences have not gone away. But what we're seeing here today is there is actually a convergence between India and the US. That is the new thing. In the past, we thought America was imposing a set of demands on India. But today, the US is trying to revise it and is seeking support from India. So I think this is a far more conducive environment. That doesn't mean there won't be problems. There will be problems of environmental standards, labor standards. How do we negotiate them? All kinds of issues will come up. But I think the important thing is here to confidently negotiate. Because I think we have a historic opportunity because we didn't write the rules of the old Washington Consensus. We didn't write the rules in the 1945 post-war economic order was built. But today, I think India has a chance to actively participate and shape the new economic order rather than merely complaining about it, rather than merely objecting to it. So I think that is the historic moment here. And I think India should be able to seize this moment.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, everyone. Read the piece. It's on the
Thank you.
IndianExpress.com, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.